Awesome. And welcome to another episode of How to Make It in Toronto. Today's guest is Marc Reede, a serial entrepreneur, mentor, and expert in career success. After law school, Marc built his own business and spent 30 years mastering deal making and sales. As a top lecture agent, he's worked with some of the biggest names in motivation, from Magic Johnson, Simon Sinek, Gary Vaynerchuk, and more, gaining invaluable insights along the way. Marc's passion is helping young professionals bridge the gap between education and the real world. His wisdom, drawn from both personal experience and iconic mentors, is a game changer for anyone looking to stand out. Let's welcome Marc Reede.
Thank you, Carl.
I'm super excited to have you on here. I think this is going to be a great conversation today. And so just to get started, could you give a little bit of a background in regard to, how you got to this point in your career, what you've done, and we can get started there.
Well, thanks. So I did start my business, 35 or so years ago. I had gone to law school after UCLA. And it was funny because it was a mentor of mine while I was at UCLA who had suggested that I go to law school in the first place. And simply on those words of advice, I took the LSAT and ended up, 3 years later graduating from Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. But after law school, I didn't have the inkling to actually practice law. And the idea for my business of selling motivational speakers to major companies came up after a kind of a happenstance meeting with Pat Riley, who was then the Lakers coach, the Showtime Lakers coach of the 80s with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and all those. And it's just been a fun ride since then of selling, marketing, and branding speakers into corporate events, corporate appearances.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would ask is, what are some of the things you've learned or some important lessons you've learned in building a business, working certainly with successful people and getting them in front of the right types of crowds?
Well, that a lot of that stems back to the start of this business. And it was Coach Riley who used to talk about speaking at these events and how he would speak for a certain company, and he would bring back to his team some of the success standards and leadership techniques that those companies would use within their team. And he would share those with the Lakers. And it was kind of this thinking of mine as I started to do what, my passion today is, that, the reason we're on this call, of helping young people with career readiness, college seniors going from school into the real world. But it's those behind the scenes stories that I've learned along the way, because I've been to thousands of these engagements. And when you're in the green room, in the reception area with these speakers, having one-on-one time, you learn so much. And then when you're actually watching the speeches themselves, that stuff sticks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's awesome. And you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you're surrounded by a lot of people who've achieved success, and a lot of businesses that are being successful. Is there a trait that you see or some commonality that you feel you find in a lot of these either interactions or these people in these businesses that is something that is shared amongst all of them, and something that you think is important to have or to maintain to be successful?
Yeah, I think the true answer to that lies in relationships. And it's amazing to me that in business today, this is relationships. And when you're at a corporate meeting and you watch the way a company works, within their team, their employees, their top sales producers at this convention in Las Vegas, or when you're listening to what a speaker has to say, to energize these people to do better even more next year, right? It's about relationships. And when, I just find that simple handshake, that simple meeting like we're having today, the meeting over coffee, the meeting of someone sitting next to you on an airplane, it is just, it's so big, but you need to know what to do with it. I mean, once you've created that relationship, you've created that connection, I think, and what I like to stress to young people is the importance of, I mean, everyone's on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
And so when you connect with someone you meet on an airplane, at a conference, in any business setting whatsoever, you're going to find them on LinkedIn. You're going to connect with them, but 3 months later, 6 months later, you need to touch them again via LinkedIn. LinkedIn is set for the ability to message people and stay in contact with them, because those people that you met 3 months ago, 6 months ago, even a year ago or more, they will remember you, but maybe for a different reason when you reach out to them again with a different set of circumstances. So if you're a student who just finished, you've graduated from Santa Barbara, and you had an internship at Google. Well, all of a sudden, here's two pieces of information that are really important to tell a connection. Somebody you sat next to on an airplane, who is an executive vice president at another company, that's that may be able to help you along your way. And to share that information with that person is better than just, hey, how's it going? We met 6 months ago on a plane, remember me? No, you tell them what you've been up to. So it's that aspect of relationships that I have picked up over the years, that's kind of this bond that they all have in common. It's
That's
meeting
awesome.
people.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, and certainly in today's world, as they say, we're a little bit more divided because of technology, and we're going through this loneliness, like that epidemic, as they may say. But as you're saying, relationships are so important to build. So for some people who may be a little bit shy, or who may not know, especially if you're a student, for example, and you work with a lot of students who are coming out of school and may maybe be intimidated and not know how to make those approaches, what advice can you give, or tips can you give in regards to how to approach, either an executive or someone they're interested in a mentorship, and to begin that, take that first step into starting to build a relationship?
Thanks. And the answer is yes, Carl, you're right. People, not everyone is a people person like you are. And I get it. And I think they get it too. And they do realize, young people do realize they need to push themselves and be proactive in the marketplace. One of the things that I stress to young people in this new book, The Coffee Code, that we're here about, and anyway, is the importance of getting what I call a coffee meeting. And that coffee meeting is as opposed to an interview. An interview, we're in a box for 5 minutes and we're talking to someone, they're doing the questions coming at us hard. And outside that door right there is somebody hoping you fail because they're the next interviewee, right? Compare that to a coffee meeting where you've targeted certain companies, and you look on LinkedIn and you find someone at that company that has a background similar to yours. They went to the same college you went to. They're from the same city you lived, you grew up in. And you reach out to those people and you say, hey, I'd love to pick your brains. I need some advice. I'm graduating from the University of Wisconsin this year, and I'm interested in your field. I just want to talk to you for 5 minutes. I'll come meet you in the Starbucks near your office. Can we have this time together? And again, you're not talking to this person. You're sending this person a brief message, but effectively you're asking for coffee with this person. Yes, a lot of these people are going to turn you down, but someone's going to say yes. And the reason that person's going to say yes is because 5 or 10 years ago, shucks, a year ago, they were in the same position as you were. They needed that advice. Now your question, Carl, really went to, the person who isn't that proactive, or isn't, doesn't have the people skills or the speaking skills. The fact of the matter is, if you can get that meeting, that coffee meeting, that touch, you need to be a good listener. You don't need to be
Yeah.
a good talker, because the fact is people like to talk. People like to hear themselves talk. And so as long as you're a good listener, they're going to open up and let you tell about yourself. But percentages could be 80-20. They're going to be talking more than you. And so you just need to be a really good, a good listener. And, but yes, hooking that individual to come meet with you is key. And you know, that part of the equation doesn't take much from you vocally. And again, once you're at that meeting itself, you don't need that to be that vocal, but you need to be prepared if they turn the table and they want to know more about you. Because remember, when you're in a coffee meeting, that person's not going to have a job opportunity for you. Okay.
Yeah.
But if in that 20% time frame, you're able to show them why you would be great for them, that person may go back to his or her office and say, wait a second, I just met a woman who's graduating from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we need to get her before somebody else does. So all of a sudden, you've created a raving fan. And that's all you're really trying to do in life, is create raving fans for yourself.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's so true. And the importance of being a good listener, because it's also being able to, you know, make sure you're asking the right questions and being able to learn from that person in terms of establishing that relationship, right? And
Absolutely.
so do you have any practical tips for you know, in terms of how to build an authentic relationship and making sure you are asking those right questions, or making sure the approach is done in the right way?
You know, I think that comes down to storytelling and being a good storyteller yourself, and telling a story that people can follow, that's not that long, where somebody will remember you. And a story that I like to tell, in fact, I tell this to college seniors. In fact, it's a story I tell at the end of my speeches. So my speech to college students talks to the importance of creating your own brand, and finding a mentor, and building your network of relationships, and then developing a plan and working that plan. Lastly, accepting the word no and rejection as part of this game. But along the way, you need to be this wonderful storyteller. And once I tell these young people those 5 pillars, if you will, of what I believe are success points for them, I share with them a brief story. And the story is why we're really all here today. So it's to me, it's not about your success in life or finding a job or doing great things or whatever, but it's about giving back. And it's about giving back a gift that you may not realize you have right now. And so the story has to do with 10 years ago, when my daughter, Casey, got into college. She was a tennis player, and she got into USC to play tennis, college tennis. And, you know, at the highest level, right? Well, I was friends with Andy Roddick's agent at the time, tennis star Andy Roddick's agent. And Andy's agent had said, Mark, if you want to take your daughter to the Madrid, Spain tennis open, I can get you backstage coaches passes. Well, heck, you know, we're all over this. And remember, we're from here in LA. And to you know, the reason that Casey got into tennis in the first place was because Venus and Serena Williams were tennis players, and she kind of followed their careers. So now we're in Madrid, Spain. And we've got our passes, and it's the day before this major tournament. For those of you who watch tennis, this is one of the opening clay court tournaments, leads up to the French Open in the May timeframe.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's both men and women. It's all the men and women, you know, the famous men and women tennis players that you recognize. Well, Casey and I, the day before the tournament, we want to see just how close our coach's pass will get us. So we show up at the registration area of the tournament. Remember, day before the tournament, registration area of the tournament, it's like going into one of these grand hotel lobbies where there's high ceilings, and in fact, over in the back, there's two staircases that are, that lead up to where the players have their lockers and their massages and their meals. Well, we're in the lobby area, day before the tournament. There's nobody here, except off in the corner, I see somebody I recognize. I don't know him, but I recognize him. It's Richard Williams. Richard Williams, Venus and Serena's dad. And at the time, their coach. Well, they're from LA. We're from LA. Richard, I'm Marc Reede. I'm from Los Angeles. This is my daughter, Casey. She just got into college to play tennis. And your daughters were the reason that she took up tennis in the first place. He says, hang on one second. He says, Venus, Serena. So all of a sudden, the top of the staircase, here come these two girls. Come down here. Come down here, girls. I want you to meet somebody. Well, the story doesn't end there, because the next night, Venus had her opening round match against a girl from Madrid. Remember, we're in Madrid, Spain. And there wasn't a soul in that place rooting for Venus Williams except for us. And we're sitting up there. We're up in the rafters. Great shot. Nice serve. She knew where the roots were coming from, right? Well, Venus beats the girl in straight sets. And for those of you who know tennis, when you finish a tennis tournament, a tournament match, you put all your stuff in your bag and you zip up your bag and you go off in your own exit, right? Well, Casey knew this. So as the crowd is all streaming upstairs, Casey goes downstairs, and I lose track of where Casey is because people are leaving. She goes downstairs to get as close as she can to her new friend, Venus Williams, to congratulate her, right? So now my attention, now I can't see Casey anymore. My attention moves over to Venus. So now I'm watching Venus zip up her bag. She lifts her head up, looks at me, and she says, "Where's Casey?" I'm floored. I am floored. I point, she's down there somewhere, right? I know where she was. So now I see Venus get up and run over to where I've just pointed to where Casey is. Now 5 minutes go by. It seems like an absolute eternity. Here comes Casey up the stairs, tears coming down her eyes. She's holding Venus's tournament towel that you can't buy. No, right? And so now we're leaving the stadium, and this stadium has a lobby. We're in the lobby of the stadium. I once again see Richard Williams. I say, Richard, I have to tell you what just happened. So I tell him the story. He takes Casey and me in a group hug. And he says, Mark, if you had told me that my daughter just played a great match, I would have said, thank you very much. That's her job. That's why she plays so hard every day. But he says a long time ago, I taught my daughters to touch one person in life, show them you care, gift, and look what can happen. And that touching story is truly what led me into this passion of helping young people. It's what led me into the passion of now having the coffee code, right? But the cool thing about it, from my standpoint, is that I know that was a bit long of a story, but that was a story where you were rooting for Casey. And you're not going to forget that story about Venus Williams and Casey for a long time. And what I want young people and people beyond college graduation age to understand is that you want there to be a story where somebody is rooting for you, or something where somebody will remember you. And to me, that story about Venus and Casey has become a trademark story. That's what storytelling's all about.
Wow. That was a phenomenal story and powerful message. And I love that, that definition of what success is, certainly for you in terms of being able to help people, but the importance of, and I think for me is taking from that as well, is people always remember how you make them feel, right? And the difference that you can make in their lives. And that's one of those, moments where you can certainly remember that. And I really do love that story. And I watched King Richard. That's another thing. And I think he's a great man in regards to what he's done and what he built with them. And so I know you had mentioned as you're telling your stories, your success points that you think are important to mention. Could you say those one more time, and what they are and what you share with young professionals?
Well, so the success points you're talking about are effectively the chapters in the coffee code, and so the first chapter effectively. Well, it's funny. So that story has become the first chapter. So the next chapter is creating your own brand. It's something I call Me Incorporated, and it's finding, because what happens is you and your your students around you, your peers, you're all going to be applying for maybe the same jobs, but the fact of the matter is that there's something about you that is different from them. There's some skill set you've had, some travel that you've had, some opportunity, some internship you've had, something you've done in your life that makes you maybe a better candidate for this job, and them maybe a better candidate for that job. And so to me, that branding of yourself is creating Me Incorporated. The next step has to do with the importance of finding a mentor. And the mentorship story that I like to share with young people is from my friend and Magic Johnson. And when Magic Johnson retired from basketball, he knew he wanted to get into business, but he didn't know what direction to go. He didn't have much business experience. And Magic did something really smart. He reached out to the ticket office people at the Forum. The Forum is where they played before the Staples Center here in Inglewood. And he asked the ticket office people to give him a list of the names and addresses of all the people that sat in the courtside seats at Laker games. Because Magic knew that those were the icons of business, the power players in our city. He wrote handwritten notes to each one of those people. Hey, I'd just like to pick your brain. I'd like advice. I'd like a coffee meeting. Take some time. More than half of those people said, sure, come on in. And I believe 2 of those people are still his partners on some of his billion-dollar deals today. But what I stress to young people, and I stress to even older people, come to think of it, is that you don't have to be Magic Johnson to have a courtside. Because all of your viewers right now have people who have been watching their careers, watching their successes for 20, 30, even more years. And those people become your targets as mentors. So there's your first mentor. If you're a college senior right now and you have that kind of relationship in place, that's your first mentor. I'm also a huge fan of a first mentor being one of your professors. And the importance of when a professor showcases their meeting times, when they're open office hours, you got to go in and meet those people, because those people, they know your work ethic. They know what you want. They know your success points, but they also been in business, and they're so darn well connected in business that you don't realize it. A lot of them are adjunct professors, meaning they're at work. They work at a job right now, and then one day a week or a couple evenings a week, they're teaching at your school. So your professors are more connected than you realize. So that's mentorship. The next piece of the puzzle has to do with using LinkedIn. It has to do with making these connections, developing a network of connections, and, like we've discussed, staying in touch with those people. Because the stay in touch is the most important part to me. The next piece, the fourth piece of the puzzle, is developing a plan and working a plan. Because without a plan in place, you can't attack something. You can't have this success story that you want to make happen. And then lastly is, you've heard so many successful CEOs, so many successful individuals talk about how failure and rejection are what pushed them to be so strong. Well, it's accepting failure and rejection as part of this game, because so many individuals out there, well, you'll say, hey, how'd you get so successful? You know how I got so successful? Being turned down so many times. And it's really true. And it's hard to fathom that until you've gotten turned down, because you kind of need to feel it. And so once you've had that turn down, and again, I'll get somewhere else with the turn down part, but once you feel that turn down in business, it motivates you to get the yes. So many no's motivate you to get the yes. I think it's Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix, who has a great story of being turned down. And it was when he was a senior in college in upstate New York. There was an ad agency in New York City who he was going through the rounds of interviews with to get this job that he really wanted. And there were 4 other students at his school that were trying for the same thing. And they had gone through all the rounds of interviews. And this company said, okay, we're inviting the 5 of you down to New York City for our final rounds and to meet some of the people here in the office. Well, so he came down to New York City, met everybody, thought he did great, finds out he didn't get the job. So he gets back to school and he sends these people a note. And he says, wait a second, I worked really hard here. How come I didn't get the job? I thought I did everything you wanted. Because he knew, he didn't know of anyone who got the job. So he gets a note from these people saying, you know what, come, I want to meet you again. Goes back to New York and they give him the job. And he says, what the heck? He says, we didn't give the job to anybody. That's what the people at the ad agency said. We just wanted to see who wanted it bad enough, who wouldn't take no for an answer. So no in business does not mean no. That leads me to something else, Carl, that I think is really important to share with people, because I do realize that, when you're on this success path of yours, that you want to do better and you want to get a new job, or you want to get a partner, you want to get someone to buy your startup or invest in whatever you've got. The fact of the matter is that life gets in the way. Something may happen in your home, in your family life, in your relationship life, that will make you turn away. Okay? And if that happens, you turn away and you reboot when the time is right. Because you can't reboot in the middle of life getting in the way, because you're not the authentic you that you need to be. Does that make sense? I understand if you're, if you have relationship issues, I mean, having someone in a relationship say no or turn you down or reject you when you think they like you, that's like getting a punch in the stomach, and to a point where you can't be yourself. Well, if that happens, you got to say time out. You got to take a pause. And the real fact of it is that if you take that pause, let's say you're on a roll and you're getting all these interviews, and you get all these meetings and coffee meetings and doing whatever it takes to get successful, and something hits you, okay, whatever it may be. When you pause and you reboot a day later, a week later, shucks, a month or 2 months later, nobody's going to know. Sadly, nobody's going to miss you. You wish it were the case. You wish it were the case. But there's so much more going on in other people's lives that when you resurface after this event, it'll be like it was just yesterday. People will say, oh, there she is. She's back. Great. And it's not like you ever even went away. And you don't even have to remind people you went away, because this is your reboot. But you need to be mentally stable and in the moment for these things to have the authentic you. And I just, I think that is so important to understand that, there's business and there's personal. And when you're in your business mode, you got to put the personal back over there.
Yeah. Wow. That was really powerful and so true, because I think you've hit on something where we are in this culture where we forget that you need to be able to take a break and you need to be able to handle other aspects, because I feel like we're in this mode where everyone just wants to work, or make that the most important thing. But forgetting to understand that, to be the best version of you, you have to do your best to take care of all the other aspects in your life as well, right? So
I think, Carl, sorry to cut you off, but I just think that the young people feel, and it's because of Instagram, because of a lot of social media. People are posting stuff on social media it's all the good stuff. They don't post the bad stuff. And
yeah, exactly.
And so your peers, your fellow seniors at Princeton, they're posting all this stuff, and you're going, oh shucks, I'm not getting interviews, I'm not getting internships. What the heck am I doing wrong? They're doing everything right. No, you can't think like that. You really have to make this be about you. And I can't say to you, close off the world from the noise, because you're gonna follow people on Instagram, you're gonna watch the stuff, and it's a part of your life. I mean kids, the young people these days are and the reason that young people are in such demand by these companies is because they understand all these technologies, social media aspects that someone like me may understand, but isn't as accustomed to. And that understanding and that usage on a daily basis has tremendous value to these companies. It really does. And these companies listen. I was we had booked Adam Grant. I'm the Wharton professor and mega best-selling author for an event that I was at a year or so ago. And Adam was telling a story about a hedge fund company that hires interns, and he was talking about how thousands of young people line up to be interns with this company. And he says, why would that be? Who in the heck cares? Well, the fact is, this company's been around for 100 years or 150 years, and if you are one of their interns and you don't agree with one of their principles or one of their tenets that their business was built on, and you can share with them why you feel this should be changed, they listen and they change it. And so Adam Grant was trying to share with people the fact that a young person does have a voice in these in a major company, and so you do have a voice.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's super important, and I think it's a great lesson to share with the audience, and certainly with young people, to understand the importance of having a voice and speaking up and not being afraid to have the wherewithal to be able to speak up and use that voice to help themselves or to help a business, because it's important to listen. I want to talk about, obviously, the book, which is why we're here, The Coffee Code. I feel like this is a super informative and valuable book for anyone to have on their shelves. Obviously, you've shared a lot about the value that it can provide, what it can teach you. What was your idea when you decided to write this book, and what would you say your hope or your goal is with it, for anyone that chooses to pick it up? Obviously, there's a lot of value there, but what do you say your goal is?
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you, Carl. So the Coffee Code came about because when my kids were in their early 20s, I was the go-to dad, because I had my own business, and I was the go-to dad to give those pep talks to those that, one-on-one pep talks to a lot of those young people, to say, hey, don't worry, you got this. It's here's what you got to do, and you'll be just fine. Because it was young people worried about getting an interview or getting a whatever kind of opportunity, or having some success in the real world. And I just, and I'm sure you've given many of these, and I'm sure many of your viewers have given them as well. Well, I just enjoyed the way that these young people would listen. So much so that I started to reach out to people I knew on college campuses, teachers and deans at schools, and I began to speak on college campuses. I did find that my my stories tend to work best with a senior. A freshman has no worries. Junior, a sophomore, a junior, it's not worry time yet. It's really the worry time when you're in that 22, 23-year-old range, right? And so I would speak on college campuses, and my notes for my speeches became the basis for the book. And yes, it is it's a passion project for me. It's so exciting to have it finally done. I've learned a lot, kind of just because about the whole book and publishing processes. At first I thought that the book was going to be traditionally published by a Wiley or a Random House, whatever. Then I realized a couple things. One, if you're traditionally publishing a book, you're typically famous. There's a reason, a major publisher, they want you to have name recognition immediately so that they can easily sell that book, right?
Yeah.
The idea of self-publishing a book, and the Coffee Code is a self-published book for one reason. Remember I told you that my mentor when I was in college had suggested that I go to law school, and I said, okay, I'm going to law school. That was the only person I listened to. That was the only reason. Ed Hookstrad was the only reason that I went to law school, took the LSAT and went to law school. But in the exact same vein, Mel Robbins, if you follow her, and
I love her podcast,
yes, and Mel got very famous. She and her husband everything in the recession of 2008, 2009, and she came up with this 5-4-3. She calls it the 5-second rule. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to get my real estate license, and kind of this don't procrastinate anymore attitude. And I was with Mel at a speaking engagement back in St. Louis, and I'm telling her about the book because I was about to finish the book up, and she says, "Mark, you are self-publishing this book." And that's all I needed to hear. Now, granted, Mel Robbins has the most successful self-published book of all time. Okay, and I'm good with that. But when that individual says, "Mark, this is what you're doing," hey man, I'm listening. So yes, the Coffee Code is a self-published book. I'm excited for it. I'm learning a lot about self-publishing. That how about this? There are many self-published books that are sitting on the shelves of your local Barnes and Noble right now. It's exciting for me to have the Coffee Code available on barnesandnoble.com and on Amazon, in hardcover and paperback and Kindle. It publishes April 16th. So it's kind of a fun date for me. It's just, it's an exciting process, but yes, that's been my passion, during which, I have to still run my business. So I'm still in the business of selling these influencers, pardon me, who, whose words, so the Coffee Code is effectively a combination of my business success stories and the stories from these individuals that we book for speaking engagements. Because without those individuals, I'm not in that green room, the reception area, having that face to face. But those face to faces, they are very fun from time to time. 2 weeks ago, we had booked Tom Hanks for an event down in Long Beach, California, and the fun of our business is that behind the scenes, waiting for him to go on stage, we're just in this one-on-one time with Tom Hanks. Tom looks at me and he says, "Mark, you live in LA, right?" I go, "Yeah, I live here in LA." He goes, "Well, so do I." He says, "How come we haven't met?" You think? But it just, conversations like that where you see the real of these people.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
just makes it enjoyable. So there's, you know, that's kind of where my passion and my business, you know, have met. But yeah, it's stories like that you can't, you know, those are pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is so cool to get the opportunity and to, as you're saying, have one-on-one times with so many, you know, really cool and successful people. That was really awesome.
Yeah.
And so, to basically, I would say is being able to write a book, but then also manage your business. What are some resources that, you know, have helped you in your career in managing your business and also in writing this book?
Boy, I that's probably a question of time management, and I'm not one who, you know, reads books on time management. And I know there's hundreds of them or thousands of them.
Yeah.
And I just, well, so what happened to me was, and this a couple of years ago, I was, I love art. I love going to art galleries and you know, certain pieces like this Frank Romero piece behind me. But I had shown interest in an artist named Kenton Nelson. Kenton Nelson, you know, you've got to look up his work, but it's just, to me, some really awesome stuff.
Okay.
And Kent was having a show in Pasadena, which is near where his studio is. I didn't know this. But you know, I live in LA, and Pasadena is, you know, a half an hour drive. So I went to this show. And you know, when you show up at like the opening night of an artist show, the artist is there, and I shake hands with the guy, and I tell him, you know, what I do for a living, and I said, you know, I've been working on this book project, and you know, you really inspire me, you know, what you do with your thing. He says, Mark, I have to tell you a story, and it's really cool when someone like, you know, like Richard Williams or someone tells you a story, you got to listen. Because if someone's telling you a story, remember, people love to talk. People love to tell stories. I love to tell stories, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm good at it. Well, Kenton Nelson tells me that he was working at a you know, in the printing industry, like the commercial printing industry, for 40 years.
Yeah.
And he says that he wanted to become an artist, but he could never find the time. And he says that someone that he worked with said, Kenton, you have to take one day a week and devote it to your art. Close off to everything else. Put your blinders on. And your artwork is one day a week. He says, Mark, you need to take one day a week and get this book project finished. Because at the time, I was just at this, you know, when you're working on a project and it takes a number of years to finish, you start to say to yourself, what the heck, you know, what am I doing? How do I end this? Right? Because you want to put a finish to it. That's why it's really cool for me to have an actual book in hand, right? To share with you today. But so Kenton says, Mark, I need you to take one day a week, and that becomes the day for your passion. That becomes the day that you sit down and you just write all you need to write, and you finish this thing. And that's exactly what I did. In fact, the thank you, you know, a lot of people like have the thank yous in their books, like on the first page, and thanking their parents and all that stuff. No, my thanks. If I could open this book, I'd be dangerous. My thanks on this my giving thanks page. I'd like to acknowledge a special person who doesn't even realize he's my mentor, but whose inspiration got me to the finish line, Kenton Nelson. So that's my thanks for getting this thing finished. Mel Robbins is my thanks for getting it self-published. You're my thanks for getting this word out. And but this is, you know, it's a process. You know, this is when we're talking about, you know, developing your plan and working your plan. You know, to me, the Coffee Code book is my plan. That's what brings us here right now. It's just like, you know, your viewers have a plan of getting a job or getting an investor or, you know, whatever it takes. You know, we all have many plans in our lives. So I'm just in the middle of a mini plan.
Yeah, That's awesome. I
Yeah.
thought like, yeah, no, that's totally true. And I think it's a great, to me, it's a book that I've already pre-ordered. I would suggest that everyone gets this book pre-ordered because I think it's going to be so helpful and valuable. And one of those you're going to be able to pull off your shelf and read, at different points in your life too, because of the, obviously the great advice that's in there, and obviously the great advice that you're giving us today. And so,
Thank you.
obviously, you've had this phenomenal career. You get to meet so many great people. I wanted to ask is, what are you most proud of at this point in your life with everything that you've been able to accomplish?
I learned a long time ago that you can't pat yourself on the back. And in fact, in my book, I tell young people to accept praise, but never expect it.
Yeah.
Because we're living sadly in a thankless world. You're at a job and someone tells you to do something and you do it really well, and you do it in fact better than anyone else would have done it, and nobody thanks you. They're on to the next thing already. Well, if you're waiting for the thank you, hey, it ain't coming.
Yeah.
You need to move on. Know you did a great job. Accept it if it's given to you, because some people are going to be, hey man, thanks, you were unbelievable. But if it's not given, you can't expect it. So I don't have, other than watching my kids grow and kind of enjoying their rides now, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Mark, it's been so great to speak to you. And I just wanted to confirm is where can we get access to the coffee code? Where can we learn more about Marc Reede?
Thanks. So I'm really excited because there is a TikTok page, and I'm sure that you have the ability to spell my properly for your viewers.
Yeah.
But there's a TikTok page and an Instagram page that are Mentor Marc Reede, MarcReede, and then marcreede.com, marcreede.com, is my website that has links to the books, and in fact there is a sign up there for young people that want to give me their email addresses and first names, so that I can share what I call life hacks with them on a regular basis, or things I wish I knew when I was in my early 20s. The book, if you go to Amazon.com, you can now see the book available for pre-sale, and then on BarnesandNoble.com, the Coffee Code book, you can find it for pre-sale as well. And that date of publish is April 16th, and then we're off to the races.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Mark, thank you for everything. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today. All the great insights that you've provided us, and definitely looking forward to the book. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for hearing my stories. I appreciate you, Carl.
Awesome. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.